Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to one of my colouring videos. In this video I'm going to be doing a testing and a review of a pencil brand called Brynzeel Expressions. Now, I've had another brand of their pencils in the past. These pencils I find more oily and slightly harder core, so it'll be interesting to see how they work with blending solutions. I'll be using baby oil and zest it, and also I'll do a small colouring project to test them out on different paper. Now I remove all my pencils from the original tins they come in, so I can't show you the tin because I don't intend to keep those. And I put my 72 set of these pencils into a case. I have different cases for different pencils to remind me which pencil's in what case. The colour selection is quite good. It's similar to other brands, budget brands actually, of pencils. I would have liked more yellows and orange though, but apart from that it's fine. Plenty of pinks and purples, blues, lots of nice greens and browns, and there's lots of greys as well if you use greys. I'm not a big grey person, but there's plenty there. There's also a silver and a gold. I haven't used those as I tend to combine different colours to make those effects. So the pencils themselves have I like the shape of these. I can't remember what the octagon kind of barrel. They're easy to hold. They're not too thin. The colour at the base of the pencil mostly matches the core, though one or two are way off. They do have a number on. Unfortunately though, it is about a quarter of the way up from the bottom, so when you get to this point and you sharpen your pencils, you're going to lose the number. I prefer the number to be on the end, to be honest. But they don't have a name. That doesn't bother me because I don't always use names anyway. I always do swatches for these, all my pencils. I just find it easy to find pencils and the combinations I want to use, doing it that way as well. So I'm going to now do a layering and blending test. Now I use Crawford and Black sketchbook for doing testing my pencils and get my combos and that kind of thing when I'm doing colouring. It isn't very thick paper, but it does have a slight texture. I find it really useful for doing this kind of thing. I'm going to be using 3 turquoisey green tones, and the darkest is 749, the medium tone is 779, and the lightest tone is 740. I'll start with the lightest tone, and I always use a light pressure. And these pencils, I've been using them for a while now, they tend to, they feel like a harder core. They go down reasonably smoothly, but they are a harder core, so that makes me feel like there's more oil in these pencils. The waxier the pencil, the softer they are, and so when I'm using oil-based pencils, I have to be even lighter, I find, with my layers. Otherwise I really struggle to get the layers down. I'm overlapping slightly between each colour, so overlapping with this darker into the medium green, and I overlapped into the light from the medium green. Doesn't awfully make a nice transition. So that's the first layer, and I'm going to try and do about 5 layers. I find about 5 layers works best when I'm doing layering with solutions. If you do any less than that, there's not enough pigment on the paper. Now this is the 5th layer, and I'm going to go in the opposite direction with my colouring to fill in a little bit more of the tooth. So that's 5 layers. I'll just zoom in a bit more so you can see. You can still see a little bit of the tooth of the paper, but it's not been too bad, especially with the medium and the dark covering this slightly textured paper. The light colour is struggling the most, so we'll see what happens when I come to blend that. I'm going to do another underneath here for so I can do 2 tests with solutions, but I'll do that off camera and then come back to this. Now I've repeated what I did the first time when doing the layers, so get enough layers down, 5 layers before I try and do a blend. And I tend to do that, about 5 layers, and then I'll try a blend. The first solution I want to try is Zest It, which is a blending solution for coloured pencils. And I have a sponge, and I put the solution inside, which the sponge soaks up. I use a cotton bud and just get enough of the cotton bud. Not too wet, just take the excess off. And then I start from the light, going towards the dark. Just little circular movements or straight movements, just lightly. Now that's okay. It's still a bit patchy though for a blend, but it could be the pencils or it could be the paper. We'll see how the baby oil does. So I have a little bit of baby oil in a little egg cup, and again using a cotton bud, a little bit on the end of it to just take the excess off because I don't like it too wet. And light towards dark again. Now that worked a bit better. It looks smoother, I feel. If you have a little zoom in, it does look smoother than the Zest. So with these pencils, I probably would need more layers down to be able to blend with the Zest, but I can get away with 5 layers with the baby oil. So I will now try and put another layer down. Start with the Zest first. Now you can wait for this to dry if you wish, but I tend to put it down when it's still slightly damp, and that's because it reacts to the pencils, and I find the layers go down easier after I've done the blending with solution. I'm still only using light layers, light pressure. These pencils must have more oil in because they keep the points better than my wax pencils. So there'll be more of a oil balance in these pencils. So it'll be quite good for detailed areas, small areas. I tend to use them for that, to be honest. Now that went down okay, but it's still looking a little bit patchy. Now I'm going to try put another layer on top of the baby oil. blending. Just light pressure, see how this goes down. And this seems to be going down smoother than the zest. Could be that the baby oil is reacting better to the oil in the pencils. So yeah, I think the baby oil looks smoother, it's filling in the paper texture better, and the zest, it looks slightly more patchy. However, it could be I could put a lot more layers down on there, but I don't need to do that in this video. It's just to give people an idea. So if you were using zest with these pencils, you could just keep on layering up, because by using the solution, it allows you to do that. I'm going to be doing a colouring demonstration with the Brynzeel pencils from this book. It's the Vintage Classics Colouring Pages 3 and 4 together by Tatiana Bogema Stolova. There's some lovely designs in here. I really do like these vintage collections she does. I'm just going to do a little character out of this book. It's from the Book Belongs To page, and it's this wee cat here. It's so cute. I think it's a cat. It might be a cat come something else, but it's really nice. I'm using 3 other colours from the Brynzeel set, and I'm using browns and a yellow, and this is to see how they work with colours that are a lot different, so slightly more contrasting when it comes to the highlights. See how they blend together that way. So I'll start with my lightest colour, which is a yellow, and actually with this one the tip looks a lot more yellow than the actual core of the pencil. So this is one of the pencils that actually doesn't look that much the same, which is why I tend to do swatches for all my sets. So I'm just going to go in now and put this yellow down with where I feel some highlights would be. Probably the most prominent highlights, because there's a little bit of shading in here as well to help place down your colours. Now I'm going to use the medium brown, and again this tip doesn't look much like the core. The core is a lot lighter, but it's a nice combination with this yellow, so I'm going to go into not completely into the shaded areas, but overlapping into it, and hopefully it'll give a nice gradient from the other colour I've just put down, the lightest colour. Now if I feel I need to put more of the lightest colour in, I'll do that as I'm going along. Like for instance, this section here, I want to extend that with the yellow. There we go. So now I'm going to continue with the medium brown to go into the slightly darker areas. I've tried to zoom in a little bit better because these pencils are quite light colours, and I'm noticing with this paper, it's quite thin paper, the books that come printed on Amazon paper, pencils don't always go down on it very well. I've got some pencils that cope with it really well and some that don't, and these ones are struggling a little bit on getting the pigment down, and I think that's the paper, to be honest. So now I'm going to see how the darkest brown reacts to this paper, and I'm going to go right into the darker areas because there's a little bit of shading here already in the design. I'm going to put my darkest brown in those areas and see if that reacts a bit better with this paper. These are reasonably hard pencils, and I have struggled with the harder core pencils with the books printed on Amazon paper in the past. But I know a lot of people have books from Amazon. I know I have myself, I have a few, so it's always handy to see how pencils work with this paper. It just takes a little bit more time, I find. You just need to layer more. It has to be done lightly, which is why I'm doing it very lightly. And just try and get as many layers down as you can to get a depth of colour. Now that's a layer of the darkest brown I'm using, and it all looks very pale at the moment. I think it needs a lot more layers. I'm going to try and get more than 5 layers down before I try and blend on this, with it being this kind of paper. But I'll do that off camera and then I'll come back to this and I'll try blending. Now I've put down a few layers of the colours I'm working with. Now when I use oilier kind of pencils, I tend to go over more areas, overlap more areas with the different colours, and the lightest colour I tend to go over all of it. And I found with this paper it was getting to the point where I couldn't get any more pigment down on the areas that already had the other colours. So I do think it could be the paper, because it is quite thin, and it's not really taken much, there's not much texture to it either, so it's not taken much of the pigment down. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to blend. I mean, I would probably leave it as it is and not do a blend, because they are quite light colours, but because I want to check how baby oil blending works with these pencils in one of these books, I'm going to do it and see what happens. So I'm just putting a little bit on, and I'm going to start in the lightest areas. It has smoothed it out a little bit, so now I'm going to blend into the darker areas, which will push it into the lighter areas a little bit, but just gently. Just see how that works. That's been okay. It doesn't look blotchy, so I'm going to now try and put down another layer of each colour and try the darkest first to see if it's easier now I've had a little bit of a blend with baby oil, because I found it easy to put this pencil down with the other paper, the textured paper I was testing with earlier. See how it reacts to this paper. And now I will put the last layer down of the palest yellow I'm working for the highlights, and see if it goes down as easy as the last two have. Now I've had baby oil on the paper. What do I think of these pencils? I think you need a bit of patience with them because they are hardcore, and so it takes a lot of layers to use them and get them down to a deep colour. And the paper you're using them with will help if it's got a bit of texture with it. These hasn't quite enough texture for these pencils. So that's why I think I've struggled. If you'd had a little bit more texture or artist grade paper that I print out on, I think they'll work much better with that. So overall though, I do like these pencils. They don't break like other sets they have by Brynzeel, and I think possibly they got round that by putting more oil into the pencils. The colours are quite nice. They are nice gradient matching as well. I've noticed that they're quite nice for that. And I think they're a good pencil to buy. It would have been nicer to have a 120 set. I do like the bigger sets because I tend to use a lot of pencils, and quite often I'll use up to 4 pencils for one area in different shades. So, and I've got that option with the bigger sets. So I will say bye for now. I've finished this review, and I'll come back again in the near future with another review of a different pencil.